speaker this evening, Lloyd Smith. Lloyd's speech is going to be, change is almost always difficult. It's probably part of our basic makeup as humans to prefer what we are familiar with to something new. That's even true when the new things seem to be better than the old, familiar things. Change is hard and even scary. Toastmasters is in the process of making a major change in the educational program. We've reached the end of the beginning of that change, and in about 10 months, the old familiar educational program will be wound down. For Communicate Change, the required project for Level 4 of the Visionary Communication Path, Lloyd Smith will talk about the origins of this change, how it will work, and what it means for all of us. Lloyd Smith and the new path.
In Toastmasters in general, and in this club specifically, we've talked a lot about pathways, but most of what we've talked about is the how does it work, and how do you get into it, and that kind of thing, the nuts and bolts of it. We haven't talked much at all about the why it was done. And that's actually the purpose of my speech tonight, communicate change. When you think about it, you have to think to yourself, if the old system has been around for a long time, and it has, why change it? Because after all, change is stressful, it's expensive too. In the case of changing the pathways, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. So what I'd like to explain tonight is why it was done. I have a handout that may help make this a bit more clear. Or not, but if it doesn't, at least it's attractively printed. First of all, a little background. Some of us in here have been in Toastmasters for a long time, others not. And I've got to make this make sense for everybody, so we'll see how that goes. The former educational program dates back to about the 1970s at its core. And the idea, what's connected, is almost 100 years old. A guy named Ralph Smedley invented the notion of Toastmasters. And what he had in mind was a series of projects which, if you did them well and took your evaluations to heart, would improve your public speaking. As the years went on, like most things, it evolved. And the eventual thing that we ended up with for about the last 15 years or so was a set of manuals. There was one of them called the Competent Communicator Manual. That was kind of like the basic program. And there were 15 or 16 advanced manuals working on various skills. And then starting in 2005, there was a manual called the Competent Leader Manual. And there was nothing wrong with that, except it was somewhat disjointed. So in 2010, the Toastmasters International Board of Directors, is an elected international board, I think it's 11 people, was writing its 5-year plan for the strategic plan for the next 5 years. And they decided to authorize what they call the revitalization of the educational program. And they wanted the new program to have 5 features. One of them is recognition that comes earlier and more often than it did in the old program. And that's true. There's recognition in the form of a certificate and a level award and whatnot about every 3 to 5 speeches as opposed to every 10 speeches or so. They wanted new technological resources to improve the speeches and support meeting rules. And that happens in Basecamp. There are videos and supplemental instructional things and whatnot. They wanted mobile access so that people could use it on their tablets. Basecamp does work on tablets. It doesn't work on phones yet, but supposedly that's coming. They wanted expanded video and digital content to facilitate learning among our global community of members. That sounds profound, but also more or less meaningless. And finally, they wanted stronger evaluation and mentoring components. And that's what the new program has in it. Now that brings our handout here. This is actually an outline. This side, look at this side first, okay? This is actually an outline of the program. Now, first of all, this was not created by a handful of people at World Headquarters and then foisted on the membership. They created a 270-person group called Learning Masters around the world and had them describe the components of the new program and pilot them. The one that's closest to here, closest to us, is a woman named Linda Coralfa in Spokane. I'm not sure, do you know Linda? And you do, Christina, I think, don't you? Linda Coralfa in Spokane. Very smart woman. She spent a lot of time and effort on this. Then, once they had the basic curriculum in mind, they appointed somebody called a Toastmasters ambassador in each district. In our district, there's a guy in the Tri-Cities named Ed Keeney. I lost Ed's last name for a second there. And then they created what they called pathways guides all around the district. Vicki Chatterton is one of them, so we're lucky to have her in the group. This is actually an outline that illustrates something really important about the new program. It's a curriculum as opposed to just a set of speeches and whatnot. It is horizontally and vertically integrated. Now here's what I mean by that. If you look at this column over here, the right-hand column, this is the vertical integration. These are the 5 competencies which are tied together. And in fact, they lead from one to the other. Over on the right-hand side, this shows the horizontal integration of the curriculum. For each of the paths, it shows how the competencies fit in there. The theory is that no matter what you do in the program, it links to every other aspect of the program. If you flip this thing over to the other side for a moment, this looks really complex on this side, but it's actually not. The paths themselves are the columns over here on the right-hand side of the page. And the projects and whatnot are on the far left column. And this shows you which ones are mandatory and which ones are elective for each of the paths. And what you will notice in this is that most of these things appear more than one place. In other words, something that might be a requirement in one level of one path turns out to be an elective in another level of another path. And that's not accidental. The idea was to tie everything together to create a comprehensive program. You'll also notice that if you look at the projects down the left-hand column there, many of these things are actually elements that used to be in the advanced manuals of the former program, the legacy program, but they've been reworked a lot into the new program. Finally, the thing you'll notice here, especially if you look down in levels 4 and 5, is that some of these projects are now designed to be operated in the outside world. In other words, they're not artificial projects. In Toastmasters, it's something that you need to do in the outside world. For example, leading your volunteer organization down there in level 5 as an elective. And when you read the path or the material for that project, it means literally that. You have to assume a leadership role in a volunteer organization outside of Toastmasters, do your leadership function for a while, I think it's 3 to 6 months or something like that, you know, organize some kind of a project and then report back. The entire project is done outside of Toastmasters except for the little speech where you explain what you did. And that's a relatively common thing in here. There's a lot of material in here dealing with social media, building social media presence, creating a podcast, managing online meetings, and on and on and on. And that's deliberate. All of that's done outside of the club, but it's stuff that where communication is important. The point of all of this, and it's not something you can just suddenly grasp in 5 to 7 minutes, is that what we have is an activity that now links better to the real world, probably will be better at meeting the needs of the members, and makes sense in a curricular point of view. And that's why the switch to the new system. Mr. Toastmaster.
Well, that was a great explanation and a nice handout. Gives us more to go on when we're online. At this time, I'd like to introduce our table topics master. Table topics master. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we need 1 minute for the evaluation.